Hello Year 9. You may find that lots of your teachers are recording little videos to remind you what they look like this week. Well, for those of you who I haven't met, my name is Mrs Walton, and I want to thank the huge numbers of you who have sent in all the lovely work that you've been doing via Show My Homework. It was a real pleasure to virtually meet so many of you. Thank you. For our final week, we're going to go back to basics. And in English, not through spelling, punctuation and grammar, don't worry, but the literature staple of the English language and of English learning, the story. And to fit into our theme of identity, we're going to read a story about a boy who starts life in a new country. He's a young boy who feels lost and alone until he makes friends with an elderly gentleman who keeps racing pigeons. Together they pin their hopes on a race across Europe and the special bird that they believe that can win this special race. And the bird is called King of the Sky. This book is endorsed or supported by Amnesty International because it fits in with the UN Conventions of the Rights of a Child, because it upholds a child's right to have a place to live, an identity and a home. If you're interested in investigating that a little bit further, I've uploaded a copy of the UN Children's Rights to the file as well, and you can check that out. But essentially, it outlines the fact that all children have the rights, no matter who they are, where they live, what language they speak, what their religion is, what they think, what they look like, if they're a boy, if they're a girl, if they have a disability, if they're rich or poor, no matter who their parents or families are and what they think and what they believe, no child should be treated unfairly for any reason. Now, this story we're going to look at links to many of your desert island choices too, where lots of you chose objects that created memories of home and links to you as and your identity. Afterwards, there are a series of activities for you to work through, including having a go at folding your own origami pigeon. So, as the great storytelling tradition goes, are you sitting comfortably? Then we will begin. King of the Sky by Nicola Davies. For all the children who have to find home in a new place. It rained and rained and rained. Little houses huddled on the humpback hills. Chimneys smoked and metal towers clanked. The streets smelled of mutton soup and coal dust, and no one spoke my language. All of it told me, this is not where you belong. Just one thing reminded me of home, of sunlight, fountains, and of the vanilla smell of ice cream in my granny's shop. It was Mr. Evans's pigeons in their loft behind my house, cooing as if they strutted in St. Peter's Square in Rome. Mr. Evans's face was crumpled and he could hardly walk, but when his birds flew, he smiled like springtime. I stood beside him and watched as his pigeons soared above the chimneys and the towers, up to where the sky stretched all the way to Italy. A lifetime down the mine had taken Mr. Evans's breath away, so he spoke soft and slow enough for me to understand. I like to see them fly, he whispered. After so long, underground. Every day I came to see the pigeons. I'm training them to race, Mr. Evans said, and this one's going to be a champion. He put a pigeon in my hands. I felt its small heart racing underneath my finger and felt the push of the power of its wings. Its head was whiter than a splash of milk. Its eye blazed fire. "Name him, and he's yours," the old man said. I didn't have to think. "Re di cielo," I replied, "King of the sky." Mr. Evans showed me how to catch the birds and slip them in a basket, and then we'd wheel it to the station on a barrow. "How far today then, Mr. Evans?" the railway man would ask. My friend would name a station up the line, 5 miles, 10 miles, 20 miles away, a little further each time. "They don't need a map like we do," Mr. Evans told me. "They're born knowing how to find their way. All they want is a bit of practice." Back at the loft we'd wait, eating Mrs. Evans' Welsh cakes and squinting up into the light. "Look out now," Mr. Evans would say. "Keep those young eyes of yours well peeled." Never took them long. From places far away, places that they'd never seen, the pigeons flew home, straight and fast as arrows. But the pigeon with the milk-white head was always last. Still, Mr. Evans said he'd be a winner. "He's a hero," the old man wheezed, "just like the pigeons in the war, carrying messages, even when they were shot. Just you wait and see." Every day Mr. Evans grew a little weaker. By racing season he couldn't leave his bed. So I put the race wings on the pigeons' legs and took them to the station. I scoured the sky for their return and clocked them in. Mr. Evans' bedroom wall was papered with their winnings, but not just one for Rio di Cielo, my king of the sky. "He's got the wings for the distance," Mr. Evans breathed. "Here's the race he's waited for." And he handed me the entry form. The king of the sky would go to Rome by train, then race back 1,000 miles and more. I smoothed his feathers, looked into his eye, and put him in the basket for the journey. Part of me was going with him. I wasn't sure it would come back. The race day dawned. A storm blew up. Lightning, wind, and rain. I waited for 2 whole days and nights, but the pigeon with the milk-white head did not return. I sat beside my friend's bed and I told him that perhaps the sunlight and the fountains and the vanilla smell of ice cream from 1,000 grannies' shop had made our pigeon want to stay. "No," said Mr. Evans, "that'll only tell him this is not where you belong." The old man's eyes blazed fire. "Get out there, boy," he said, "and welcome him." The rain had stopped. I ran out to the loft. I squinted up into the clouds. A speck, a blob, a bird, a pigeon with a milk-white head, a hero and a champion. 1,200 miles he'd flown, from somewhere far away he'd never been, steered north and west, finding his direction from the sun and the force that guides a compass needle, flown until he saw the shape of humpbacked hills, the lines of little houses and the little chimneys. He heard the clanking towers, smelled the soup and coal dust. Flown down into the arms of the smiling, crying boy, the boy who knew at last that he was poem. I'd like you to go to the extra resources now and work your way through and think about how this narrative, these characters and the pigeon tell us a story about identity, belonging and our sense of ourselves.